Okay, so good afternoon to all of you here. I'm Jayanti from People's Zen, and welcome to this Mind Force series, which is primarily focused towards addressing all people management and people development related aspects, especially by connecting with inspiring minds in the industry from HR, from business, and other facets. So, so of course, um, last year we were all grappling with through all these sessions, looking at how do we manage, the new normal, how do we manage the lockdown, trying to figure out some meaning out of it, and trying to see how do we sort of go ahead with our the overall agenda. So with all of that, I think this year, I think it's more of everybody's anticipating and speculating, looking at how to manage the year ahead, and especially all spheres of talent. So especially the overarching agenda is of talent agenda that we have kept, and under that we are looking at especially the learning part of it. So today's session is on what is the shifting paradigm in learning, because it's been evolving and everybody's been trying to manage their learning interventions and their development interventions in their own way. So I'm sure there are very many sessions which are happening across, because every perspective matters, because each of these perspectives helps us to make a meaning out of it and help us discover our own path, which works best for in our own organization. So, so in today's session, just to look at the aspect, we have some leaders, acclaimed leaders from different industries, and actually they're all there in their screen. So maybe they can just
Hi
say a
everybody.
hi. So
Hello.
so let me do one thing. Let me quickly give a short introduction. So we have Anil Santapuri, who's Director of Learning and Development for APAC region for CGI, and that's Anil. And then we have Shatunjay Krishna, who's the Group Head Organizational Design L&D at GMR Group. That's Shatrunjay
Hello.
out
Hi
there.
everybody. Hi. Good afternoon.
And we have Deepti Jalan, who's the Head L&D and OD at Usha International. And we have Anup Lewis, who's the HR Director at Schneider Electric, um, currently heading HR for the technology business across various continents.
Hi
So,
everyone.
yeah, hi. So here we have all of them. Of course, just to give a little context before we sort of go ahead with the rest of the agenda. So especially we've been talking about learning. We've been talking about talent management. So especially if you see the future of work, which has been like a mirage, it has already arrived, as we already know. And typically, as you see, Satya Nadella has very correctly said, whatever which had to happen in 2 years' time of digitalization last year, it happened in 2 months. So we can see all those kind of, the change which has happened, which we have witnessed. And if you especially look at skilling, it's just not about reskilling, it's about going beyond reskilling. So here, as Deloitte clearly says, I mean, one of its reports, that it's about unleashing potential of every employee, and that's what happened last year, because everybody was trying to find out, navigate, and look at what's the best thing that they can do at the workplace. So their own individual potential actually came forward. So it's about unleashing each person's potential. I think that's the kind of thought process which is being talked about. And because it's not going to be like a prescriptive approach, but it's going to be something which will evolve out of empowering people. And of course, there are very many other trends which has been discussed, whether it's about self-mastery, which is going to be the focus, or it's going to be more of, because of remote collaboration, that's the data literacy part of it is going to be so important. The agility is going to be key, etc. So this is something which the various reports, whether you talk about EY, Deloitte, and other research studies which have come in. So with that, context, I would actually urge, and I would like to, go over to, Anil, who's been doing very many things. Where we are saying, Anil, who's leading the Learn L&D initiative for the APAC region for CGI. There's been I was very keen to know about the aspect that you were sharing about the platform for learning experience, the reskilling aspect, and especially I've seen and I've witnessed your learning circles that you have built last year. Fantastic one, with 320 people in the community on Slack and the study circles, and that's fantastic. So we really like to know from, of course, from each one of you that as far as your industry is concerned, or industry per se, how do you think the L&D initiative is going to be for the year looking forward? So over to you, Anil.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks a lot for inviting me. And it's really happy to be here with all of you, especially the my co-panelists. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from them. So I represent IT organization. CGI is one of top five global IT business consulting firms based out of Canada, and in APAC we are around 15,000 members. So most of my perspectives will be kind of driven through IT industry, and that, so it might or might not align to what your industry where you are. So that would be good to have a conversation later. So I'll start with a short but a very interesting story. So back in early 19th century, there was a lady called Florence Chadwick, and some of you who follow sports, you'll know she's the first woman to cross the English Channel to swim. So after she did that, she went back to US and she wanted to cross a strait in California. So she had to swim for 12 miles. She and to go from one place to another, and she was swimming for 8 miles whole night. Actually 12 hours whole night, and it was a winter morning or winter night in California. So her father and coach were following her on a small boat. Her father actually carried a rifle because there were some sharks there. So she swam for 12 long hours, and just when she was half mile away from the coast, she gave up. She lifted her hand up saying, "Pull me back into the boat, pull me back into the boat." So both father and coach were surprised. They're like, "Are you sure?" She said, "I can't do it any longer, pull me back into the boat." So she gave up. She got back into the boat. Long story short, next day morning when she was interviewed, journalist asked her, "You swam for 12 hours and you just had half a mile to go. What happened? What went wrong? Why couldn't you do it?" She said, "I did not know that I was so close to my goal. It was very foggy. I did not know I was very close to the goal. If I knew it was only half mile, I would have pulled every ounce of my energy and reached there." So for me, the lesson from that real story is we're all living in this metaphorical fog. We call it VUCA world, we call it black swan event. So much has happened, right? There's a lot of fog for everyone, for every industry, every organization, especially every HR and learning professional. So the question is, can we demystify the fog a little, apply a bit of defogging, and see what's available, what's visible, and then make some strategies. So, and talking about skills, Jayant, you spoke about skills. How we deal with fog itself is a skill, right? So it's a metaphorical fog. You call it ambiguity or lack of information. That itself is a big skill I see, which HR learning professionals have to deal with. So I'll quickly refer to the research from World Economic Forum. They recently published a report called Jobs of Future 2025. 5 years from now, how the jobs look like. And here are the 6 factors or 6 different fogs they're referring to. What they're saying is COVID has actually accelerated digital transformation adoption. It's very interesting, right? We thought people will stop investing, but now companies are actually investing more, but focused investment. Second thing is automation is getting double disrupted. Automation was always important. Now it's getting doubly invested in. And the third is because of automation, a lot of current jobs will actually semi-automated, partially automated, or fully automated. So we'll have jobs of you tomorrow. They call it the jobs of tomorrow. Then the fourth is it's till now it's good news because World Economic Forum says 87 million jobs will be disrupted and 94 million jobs will be created. So 7 million jobs more are created. It's good news for all of us, right? But the bad news is we don't have the skills to do those new jobs. Nobody has the skills. So we have to invest in those skills. So those are like the very interesting. The other interesting fog, again, metaphorical fog coming from World Economic Forum report is, if you Google it, it's free, is because of COVID situation, young workers and women workforce tend to lose more jobs than men or senior workforce. So if you don't keep an eye on the whole diversity and generational diversity piece, we are already in a bad place as a world, right? It might further exacerbate the whole thing. So the idea is, how can we in our respective industry, I represent IT industry, but all of these are relevant for all industries, but at a different scale and different level of impact, right? So how do we address those? And my biggest takeaway, which I want to quickly cover in next minute or so, Jayanti and everyone, is the need for meta skills. Things are moving so fast. There's this very interesting debate going on. Should we actually invest on skills or capabilities of people? Because technology is changing every day. Today I train people on something, and tomorrow there's a new version, new platform, new this, new that. Or should we actually help people learn how to learn? Help people how to cope with ambiguity, help people how to deal with emotional intelligence, help people how to deal with resilience. And the more I think of it, I think there's no easy answer, but clearly there's a need to invest in meta skilling. And the reason I use the word meta skill is because if I have the skill, I can accelerate my other skills. So if I know how to learn, I can learn new skills faster. If I know how to deal with my emotion, I can deal with the VUCA world or fog faster. And then if I know how to solve problems even when there's lack of information, maybe I'll be able to solve the problems of the future better. So my quick summary would be, then I'll turn it back to you, is I think as L&D professionals we need to find the right balance between upskilling, which is current needs of people, reskilling, which is needs of future, most importantly balance it with meta skilling, where we can actually give them some lifelong learning so they can solve their own problems. And that's where at CGI we've been thinking, we're thinking of things like growth mindset, emotional agility, and other problem solving with and without information kind of the skills. Another quick comment I'll make for L&D professionals, and it's for my own self, it's a reflection on what I've been doing in my teams, is to address all this, the three, I call it the three A's, alphabet A's, which L&D need to demonstrate, is agility, automation. The whole world is automating. We also need to automate as much as we can. And third is analytics. I think sometimes we tend to preach to the choir, but we don't apply our own principles. So I think we need to be agile. We need to automate and then also use analytics to solve the problems. But those are my initial thoughts. Jayant, let me turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. I think this was very, succinctly placed. We are talking, especially I like that, comparison of the fog, and that whole fog aspect is going to be imprinted in our minds. And your balancing part of how, that's a very key point. Upskilling, reskilling, and, meta skilling part. The balance is what everybody will need to be looking at. And the three A's, especially for the L&D function. So I think that's some learning for all of us. And with that, I will request Shatrunjay Krishna to sort of look at what are what are the thought process. What do you think could be something which could be important moving forward for this year?
Thanks, Jayanti. So, before I took a corporate job, I was in consulting for about 15 years, and I could see, learning function as being one of the function which is, publishes a calendar and people work for it, and then finally something gets delivered. I think last 8-9 months, learning functions, and when the pandemic hit, and it was something that learning function really needed, actually. And as you were expected to do and come in the forefront of business and forefront of HR. So when all of this happened, I will, before that, I'm visualizing my role. For everything in learning to make happen, I had to, probably work in the background for about 40 hours for something to be tangible for our colleagues and employees. But in last about 8 to 9 months, uh, that speed in which the learning function responds to what's happening to our employees, what they need, what business needs, what skill has been, accelerated almost, 5, 6 times faster than we have to respond. So it is now, this is a very great opportunity. And as you were saying, Jayanti, is that, the business itself has, become more digitalized, etc. And this has given learning function a very great opportunity to seize the initiative. And what we see is that once you seize this initiative, you will be at the forefront of business. So you will not be quote unquote, one of the departments which organizes some training, but you will be a department which will be helping the companies and colleagues change. Because as companies are changing, even employees need a push to change. And there is nobody, even managers are right now struggling and, looking up to learning function for help. So the way I see is that learning function to seize that initiative, become more agile, start responding to it, and uh, making impact in everyday life of an employee, everyday life. And that's what we have seen in our industry. And I'll tell you, I've seen at least in my company and similar, in my conversation with others, is that today the learning function is almost like a function where you need, when you get interacted every day. So there is something which is happening every day. There is a learning which is happening in the flow of work. So I wish this trend continues, and I think this has given a great opportunity for learning community as a whole to rise up and seize the initiative. And I hope that this continues, and the learning departments and learning functions, this seize this initiative. That is, I would say.
Thank you, Shatunjay. And of course, the way that you have planned out in GMR, from what I also understand, is how learning has been strengthened in the flow of work itself. So actually, the learning programs are mimicking the real world learning. So it is at the work. I think that's one of the things which I could also understand of how you're trying to strengthen, and how the link between career and expertise development is being given much more focus in your organization, your group. So I think that's a commendable area of work which is being done. And with that, I will actually like to request Deepti, who's been doing a lot of good work in Usha, and being acknowledged with many awards year after year. And there's from what I understood last while I was speaking to you, the kind of new initiatives that you have rolled out, and I'm sure all of us would like to hear what is it that in your organization people have been learning function has been doing. So Deepti, over to you, Deepti.
Thanks, Jayanti. I represent Usha International, so that's a consumer goods. We are into consumer goods space altogether. And it was interesting to actually understand or know how 2021 is going to look at, because last year, this time when we were sitting in January 2020, no one actually knew how the year is going to end. But I guess we all quickly adapted to the newer and the challenging ways of working. I recall me with my team when the first 21-day lockdown that was announced, all of us got together in terms of re-looking at the entire way in which we are looking at initiatives. How do we kind of engage talent? And we came up with 21 initiatives overnight to make sure, if I may use the word, the crisis is managed, the business continuity is taken care of from a learner engagement point of view, and of course, all the new initiatives that we would have planned sitting in January 2020. How do we kind of make sure either we think about it in April, but we did not want to compromise on anything as far as the entire year is concerned. From a business point of view, I think the transformation that happened both internally and externally. Being in consumer goods, I want to mention that customers also transformed. The whole customer purchase journey for us has changed. Internally, automation, which was always required, has accelerated like never before last year. So there is a comfort with technology, of course, that is there, and this comfort is here to stay in 2021 also. Remote working is also here to stay in 2021 also. So keeping these aspects in mind, there are four perspectives that I feel will take precedence in 2021 for a lot of us. Above all, the first perspective is the accelerated role of learning as change agents. We're all talking about organizations are evolving, organization is continuously changing, and it's not just about the skills, but I think training and HR in alignment with L&D plays a very unique role in aligning people to the changing business needs. So the role of learning as change agents is going to evolve much more than ever before. Training managers or leaders are very uniquely positioned to communicate change, to understand skill gaps, and also to take it back to the business leaders in terms of impact. So that's the first perspective that we have as far as 2021 is concerned. If I look at the second aspect, I think the continued adoption of virtual trainings is here to stay for a while. Technology is not going to take a backseat. It is in fact going to be driving a lot of initiatives this year also, keeping consumer durable in mind. And why am I highlighting this? I think before pandemic around, there was an article somewhere which mentioned 41% of trainings are instructor-led trainings. For our industry, this would be actually 80 to 90%. But post-pandemic, our offerings will have the technology backing as well. So the L&D function will largely remain, a virtual function, so to say. So delivering more with less is going to drive a lot of our plans going forward. When I say virtual, L&D function, this brings me to the third perspective that I wanted to, mention over here, which is the entire learning experience design, where content curation and content creation take the center stage. And this is something that, in fact, we experienced last year, and we also kind of hit a little bit of a block. But we then worked out our way towards it last year, which is going to take precedence this year. What do I mean by this? A lot of the programs that probably happen, the trainer skill becomes very important. And even if the content is not that great, there is a entire learning that can handled in an instructor-led program. And if our 80 to 90% of our programs are instructor-led, we were able to manage wonderfully well. But in the virtual world, content is a very different ballgame altogether. So a lot of our designers actually need to go back and look at what are the creative ways in which we can retain the learning part of the learner. And of course, how can we make sure the interest levels are very, very high? This is the content creation part. From a content curation part, while Udemy, Coursera, all of that were already being spoken about and probably are coming more at the forefront now. But I guess the difference is in the creative usage of that organizations can make. For example, integrating digital virtual learnings in the form of a flipped classroom is what we experimented last year. And in our organization, we called it Change the Tables, where a learner would actually go through a digital course, come back, and then have an interaction with the trainer on a particular aspect, discussing, debating, and building a perspective around it. What it really did was, it was taking care of the aspect of learning anywhere, everywhere, anytime, at my own pace, all the things that we talk about. But at the same time, it was also helping in that social collaborative learning that probably the learners have. So coming out with these creative ways of integrating the best of the two is something that will take precedence in 2021 also. The last aspect that I want to mention as far as our organization is concerned is a very, very high focus on softer skills, especially at the top level. Anil nicely mentioned about fog and the fog of ambiguity and uncertainty. And in all of this, how are the leaders and managing the empathy quotient and the emotional quotient for self and for team down the line is going to be absolutely critical. Basis what we experienced last year, the business is going to continuously evolve. A lot of processes, a lot of way in which we are working is going to change. In this, the employee's ability to manage self also becomes absolutely important. These are just two examples of softer skills that I'm mentioning. In an organization, if you do a role profiling, a lot of such examples will actually come up, which is why the personalized learning piece becomes critical. So, the fourth aspect that I specifically want to highlight is the softer skills is going to take a precedence, specifically at the senior level, more than ever now. All these changes, or some of these changes, were happening before also, but I guess now it has become an integral part of our strategy for 2021 also, and requires the attention of the L&D leaders more ever than before. So that's my take as far as learning is concerned. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Deepti. I think those 4 points that you highlighted, one is about the HR or the training members being the change agents and the adoption of technology. I think the content curation part is something which is actually taking a lot of a lot of focus, and been discussed in very many angles. And of course, the last part which you said is soft skill training for senior level members. So I think all of them are, again, we are sort of there. There seems to be a fair amount of overlap, but yes, we can clearly see a trend which is coming out of all of these inputs, and thanks for that. With that, I would like to request Anup. Anup, of course, there's a lot of, I think last year, 91% of learning went digital or something. I mean, that's the understanding that I have. That's what that you did in your organization, and especially the leadership trainings going digital. There was the first time leadership trainings going digital, because there's always been a talk about how leadership trainings can actually be done virtually. So that is something that your organization did a great job on, and especially another part of how the growth opportunities internally can be put through open talent market. So I think there are very many things which possibly, Anup, we really like to know from you. If you can share your perspective with all of us.
Sure. Thanks, Jayanti. I hope I'm audible to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. I think as I think Anil already did a little bit of a zoom out and then moved into learning, etc. So I will do the same. Maybe I'll try to probably skip the ones which he has already touched upon. So in terms of the key business trends, couple of them, I think one is more connectivity. When I say connectivity, I don't mean that it is the day-to-day your LAN WAN or Wi-Fi or whatever. I'm not meaning that, but the connectivity, when I say that it is being disruptive innovation, which is we have experienced in the past couple of years and specifically last year due to COVID, etc. So I think that's the key. Second, I think, is lowering the transaction cost. I think today, to scale a business, you don't need probably the capital what you used to need before, but I think it is the transactions costs have come down drastically. Unprecedented automation, I think, is already touched upon. And the last one was probably the societal shifts, the fundamental shifts in the society and our workforce as well, mainly because the generation Y coming into the organization, the aspiration of them, probably expecting more variety in learning, and being the careers are much more shortened, I would say, compared to before, and they would look for a constant change, etc. I think these are the 3 or 4 key trends I think would drive a lot of HR initiatives as well as from a learning perspective. Now, coming back to some of the key points which I read in a McKinsey article, if you want to be at the head of the curve, I think focusing on purpose. I think more than 83% of the companies, top performing companies, I think they're focusing on purpose, and thereby inspiring that commitment from employees, which you don't see normally on a face-to-face basis. So I think the purpose is going to take a center stage. The second is your value systems and principles which you are defining for your organization. I think that's going to be even more key, because again, you are not meeting the people so much in person like before. So I think that is the second part. And if I give an example of Schneider here, we have 5 key values, and out of them, learning is one of our key values itself. Forget about the priorities, but I think learning is being one of the key value for us. I think the third point in terms of if you have to be ahead of the curve is, culture as a secret sauce. I think that's going to be even more key. And here, it is not that it is just on the wall, but also how it will guide you while you're working from a distance. I think that's going to be really tested. I think the last one, and I think would say the important one, treat talent as is more important than the capital, and it is more scarer than the capital as well. So I think these are a couple of them I like the most in terms of if you have to be ahead of the curve. Now, having said those, the trends and how you have to be ahead of the curve. Now, if I put myself into the my learning shoes, I think the things which took some, were taking a shape in the last 3-4 years. If you talk about digital learning, which are shorter, bite-size, mobile, social, gamified, anytime, anywhere, which we talked about in the past. And if you are prepared for those trends about 2 or 3 years back, I think COVID would not have been a big challenge for us. But I think now COVID has forced us to, expedite those further. So I would say these are from the past, would continue. The next one, which we are focusing at Schneider, is that peer learning and community learning. How do you put them together, learn from each other, rather than so much from the classroom per se, but also the exposure piece. The peer learning, the community learning is certainly taken as center stage. I think in terms of the methods of learning, I would say augmented reality, virtual reality trainings. I think that would increase drastically much more. I mean, it has picked up, as I said, in the past, but it would go more further. I think for sure, ILT, which was instructor-led training, was a big thing for us in the past, and it was there. Now I think it has become that, ILT becomes VILT, so the virtual is added by default and for all. So I think that is the other key point. I think the another area which we are focusing is currently is that micro learning. It is maybe one skill at a time, one objective, rather than having multiple objectives. So micro learning certainly is becoming focused. The last but not the least, I would say, is around skill versus the mindset. I think Anil touched upon it as well. So should we focus on skill, or should we focus on the mindset? So I think the mindset piece, if it is taken care, the skill would automatically fall in place. I think that would be my last point. I would say that focus on the mindset, and if mindset we are able to shift the mindset, rest of it's fall in place quite automatically. And shifting this mindset change, I think the learning team has a huge role to play.
Thank you. Thanks, Anup. And I like that point of yours, which in the context of the value system and the culture part of it, the key point of treating talent, treating talent with a lot of care. That is going to be something which will, of course, which will redefine. It's been there, but of course now it's got into a multiple levels. And your aspect of peer learning, because everybody's been earlier talking about mentoring and various ways, but peer learning, people or organization are still grappling with it as to how to do it in a very effective manner. And of course, we can circle back again on that part. And another big challenge with respect to AR and VR, because everybody's been talking about it, but the kind of cost efficiencies that you look at in AR, VR, that's again, people have, multiple thoughts on that as to whether, very conflicting thoughts. So I think that's something that we can always come back to and probably reflect on that a little bit more. So with the first level perspective that we have gathered from all of us, all these speakers, I think there were few areas that people really wanted to dive deep. And so some of the areas, like whether it is about the year which is going to be fairly hybrid. The most famous word which has actually come in is, so last year it was unprecedented word, that word kept going, it was reverberating everywhere. So now this year, from the first week, or I was first day, or maybe last month of last year, that hybrid word has been really coming out. So the hybrid is one part, and of course we are also talking about digital learning, a lot of it, and skilling, reskilling, and especially the meta skilling part, which really, it's really, that's very enigmatic. So that's something which really needs to be delve deeper on each of these aspects. So here is my actually question to Anil about what are your thoughts about all that aspect of upskilling, reskilling, and of course the meta skilling part, which people really want to know more of it. If you can share your understanding for all of us.
Thank you. Thanks, Shinten. And before I start, it was very organizations from various industries are doing right things, responding at their employees, including some organizations having learning as a core value. I think that's brilliant. So, the way upskilling is in my current role for my current job to enhance my performance to the next level is upskilling. Generally, upskilling is a delta kind of a learning. So let's say I'm a technical example. Let's say I'm a manual and I want to now run.
Sorry,
So generally, upskilling can happen quickly. Yeah. Earlier, I think some of the term.
So there seems to be a lot of disturbance. Maybe it's.
Is it is it better now?
Now it is okay. Now it is okay, but in between, not able to hear clearly. Digital, yes.
Can you?
Yeah, now it's clear. Now it's clear. In between, it's actually, maybe it's about the connectivity.
Let me stop my video for a minute if it helps. Is it better now if I pause my video?
Yeah.
From bandwidth perspective?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So let me be the voice from the sky. So the upskilling is when you have to add a delta, a new version or a new learning to kind of enhance your existing skills so you increase performance in your current role. Typically, that's upskilling. Whereas reskilling is actually completely getting trained and train and be ready new skills. So let's say if I take a Java programmer and want to train him or her in AI or ML, that's reskilling. Whereas taking an existing Java programmer and training them to be Java full stack is kind of upskilling. So I think upskilling generally is driven by performance needs of the person.
Sorry, not able to hear you, Anil. Okay, so looks like maybe there's some issue there.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, I just
now
got.
We can, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Sure. So reskilling is taking somebody and training them in something completely different, like AI, ML, cybersecurity, so on and so forth. And that's again driven by the fourth industrial revolution, where technology is going and it's affecting all industries. The difference between upskilling and reskilling is upskilling you could do in a day or a week, whereas reskilling needs a lot of foresight because we've been running a pilot program in CGI where existing developers and training them in AI ML has been a 6-month project, and we did a pilot there. And it's also echoed by the World Economic Forum report, which says the average number of days you need to reskill somebody is 110. So I cannot wake up in 2025 and say I'm going to reskill my entire workforce. I'll not have enough time. So I have to start now. It needs a lot of foresight. So what we have done at CGI is we looked at the entire technology landscape and grouped them into skills which are matured now, skills which are getting scaled in next 1 to 2 years, and skills and technologies which will emerge after 3 years. So we kind of group them in those three categories and looked at all technologies, divide them into those categories, and have a different strategy for each. So that's how we kind of doing this roadmap of reskilling. And interestingly, when COVID happened, we launched a new learning experience platform at CGI. Um, and we launched an entire digital learning journey on these emerging technologies. We had to actually launch the platform on April 17th. You can imagine we worked for 6 months. Didn't know if it was the right thing or the wrong thing to do because everybody was under lockdown at home. But we went with our gut and launched the platform, and the total learning hours spent by our members increased 40% compared to last year. So digital learning adoption went
Fantastic.
really well. Success there was this. So we positioned learning aligned with the future skills. We said digital foundations program to get ready for future skills, and we curated the content. We created a curated learning journey for 40 hours. We partnered with NASCOM also, and as we speak, this 1/3 of members in CGI Pack, which is over 5,000 members, 1/3 of our workforce, are already certified in that digital foundations program, and it's co-branded by NASCOM and CGI. It's actually published as a case study on NASCOM website. I'll quickly post the link in the chat here for all of you to quickly have a look. So that's about reskilling, but meta-skilling is even further. It's a lifelong skill, like learning how to learn, ability to develop resilience, which was a big need in COVID, right? And then problem-solving skills, and then emotional intelligence. So the idea is to start now and keep investing in people. The challenge I'm grappling with, and I'm sure all the learning leaders grappling with, is finding the right balance. We have limited time, limited resources, and limited budgets. So how much do we invest in upskilling versus reskilling versus meta skilling? And that's where digital platforms are helping us. The more we adopt a digital learning platform, we're able to scale, and therefore the operations management is less, the budgets are less. So whatever budgets or time you save there, invest in reskilling and meta skilling. So that's what we're grappling with, and the entire F21 this whole year will be the journey of striking the right balance, and that's the journey I'm currently in. Sorry for the connectivity issue, but hopefully I was able to get through. So that would be my response, Jayanti.
Thank you for that. And probably some of the insights, if you would like to share, you can probably put a link in the chat so that, for the larger audience to get to know more about it. So with that, of course, I think this meta skilling thing is something which is still, intriguing, and how to sort of get that on, and what is the best way of rolling out programs so that one can create that kind of a balance. And of course, 40% up learning, and I'm sure many of the others would have similar stories as to how during this digitalization of learning, how it went up. So I think these are some very nice things to hear. Probably this whole, this is the silver lining to the whole thing which happened last year, and how things are going to go ahead. So thanks for that. With that, I will request now especially we've been talking about the hybrid workplace, and here, from what I understand, that's something which Shatrunjay may like to share. Of course, what I'm also seeing is 55% people who have been surveyed generally in the industry, they all prefer hybrid. I mean, 55% to 60% of the crowd says they want to actually have hybrid kind of a work environment. So that is going to stay. And especially if you look at the various surveys by Gartner, it says 21% increase has happened in overall performance and productivity. Of course, there are very contradictory aspects also coming out, but there's been overall raise of performance and maybe mental health also because of remote work, working from home and things like that. So it's going to stay. So with this kind of an environment and with this kind of hybrid arrangement, how is it? How do you think the learning part of it is going to be managed, Shatrunjay? This is for you, and if would like to know your perspectives there.
Thanks, Jayanti. So, as you said, we in HR have this good capacity to invent, jargon, and hybrid is the new jargon for 2021. And I would say, when I see hybrid essentially being used in two ways. One, the way you described, which is about, hybrid work environment. So I'm going to come to office, or I'm going to work from home, or I'm going to work from anywhere. So that's like the work context that I have, and that is the one way. So let me deal with that way, and then I'll go to the way I see hybrid being used in a different context also. And that context is more around, no longer the jobs are in one function or one job family. So let's say in learning, we are learning professional. At the same time, last 1 year, we have become tech professionals. So it's like learning and technology together. So no learning professional is an able or capable learning profession unless they will have a technology understanding in their job. So that's another aspect of a hybrid. I'll deal with that later. But let's come to the workplace environment in terms of hybrid. Yeah, obviously, everybody is saying hybrid is going to stay, primarily because there are a lot of vulnerable section of people who would like to not come to office, and also we are not losing anything from being hybrid. And many of the industries, anyways, from technology side, they were going. I would say our industry, my industry, which is infrastructure, we operate airports, we operate power plants, we operate, those kind of industries. They were, last to go this sort of an hybrid environment. That will depend on the industry context a lot. We will still go to hybrid, maybe not to the extent a technology player would go, but we'll go hybrid to a good extent for many job families. Obviously, our operations job in airports and in power plants, they will go to an extent hybrid, but not fully. At the same time, and I'm reflecting how hybrid is helping and where it will be contextual. So obviously, hybrid will help in terms of very well-defined transactional jobs. So if a financial transaction has to happen, you don't have to come to office. Financial transaction can happen anywhere. A presentation has to be made, you don't have to come to office, it can be made from anywhere. But so in those transaction jobs, the hybrid model is going to be very, very effective. But at the same time, I think there are a few things where you still need a human interaction. I would say that over a period of time, you'll realize that there are many creative jobs where you need creativity, and that creativity will follow and flow when you start working. You remember, what happened when Marissa Mayer joined Yahoo. Yahoo was working around 90%, from home, and she started pulling people and come to office, because even technology companies, they realized at some point in time, you can continue with your own business and the business can happen very, very well. But if you want to really move to a change, you want to change the business model, create creative products, etc., sometimes people have to come together. And so the hybrid is going to stay. I think the hybrid will vary from job families to job family, from industry to industry, and it will get refined over a period of time. And we'll still need creative workplaces. We still need creativity, and that creativity will come from human interaction. And as you can see, you must be reading in the newspaper, our airports are, at the forefront of creativity. We are launching, digital initiatives, etc. You can do sensors and all of that. And, we are sort of leading that area. And that is possible because there is somebody at the terminal who is looking at what our customers are experiencing, isn't it? And you cannot, remotely watch over a camera. So you have to be there. At the same time, we have to be intelligent about it. So that's one aspect of hybrid. In fact, while I was talking to you, Jayanti, I thought there's another aspect of hybrid that we see a lot, and that we'll see a lot. And that is very relevant from a learning perspective, is that no job right now, and over the years, we'll see that will become a pure sort of a job. You will find it difficult to classify a job as like a operations job. So let's say, people in the terminal, are they doing operations, or are they're also looking at technology, because they're right now they're using sensors and all of that. So for every job, there will be a mix of jobs will start, mixing up. For HR people right now, especially in finance, HR, let's extend I see a lot of asks for understanding, RPA or process automation, intelligent automation, AI, ML, etc. So the no finance person is a complete finance person unless he or she understands what is the RPA opportunity in finance. Similarly, HR person or techno, I dealt with that, is a HR person unless they understand technology. Now HR technology, where would you classify? Is it like an HR skill or a technology skill? So what is going to happen is that all jobs will, and it is not a new concept. We always had this T, the perfect jobs, the perfect skills are T, that you have a depth and you have a, the T sort of a profile for a skill. And this will become more and more important. Our jobs in all function, I would say, even in production and even in manufacturing, and we see that in our plants and we see that in our terminals, there will be requirement to understand technology more. Right now, my expectation from a production person is that he or she should be able to understand IoT and start using, technology more, because the regular production processes, I can hire anybody, but tomorrow when I'm going to use the technology, it will really be production aided by IoT. So I would really look at not a plain vanilla production person. I will look at production plus IoT, and that's will change. In fact, just to share with you, I was talking to somebody, and we have this a very job which, and sometimes we feel it's not very significant job. Let's say an executive assistant job, and now I see there is a demand for that job. That no, executive assistants. Oh no, let's have digital assistant, because executive assistant, we don't need now to travel and time and email. We need a digital assistant for a lot of our senior executives who can help navigate the digital world, do these meetings. Everybody is expected to use advanced digital technologies. So a personal assistant or executive assistant is now becoming digital assistant. So the skills which will require for a sort of a plain vanilla executive assistant job is changed, and that is at one end. And in the other end, the high mechanical engineering jobs in the plant, etc., they will require more of technology and IoT. In HR, we can talk. This is a topic we can talk a lot. So there are two kind of obviously, one is the hybridization of context, and that is the working context. Another is hybrid of the role, and I also have been working in the org design part, for multiple years and decades. And I used to lead the A group practice of that. And I am fortunate that here, I look after both org and skill. And as you see, the org is changing fundamentally. And when the org is changing fundamentally, there will be at some time, and our workforce cannot change so fast. So there will be a pressure that the org expectation is this, and the workforce, this is, and all this has to be aligned, that the workforce will start getting matching with the role expectation, and expect our roles to be hybrid. Many of our roles to be hybrid. You would require to know technology, you would require to know data science, you would be required to know all of this. And this is no longer a domain of technology people, this is a domain of us. And in fact, just to share with you, many a time in our learning function also, we went on and had developed an app, which essentially meant is that we need to understand, Android and technology, because, we cannot go out and, work with vendors and explain them for, 2 months or 3 months. We have to develop on our own, and we have to get our hands dirty. So that's another aspect of hybrid. And I would say these two aspects are equally significant in their own way, and then they will continue. So that's what my take it, and my take on the hybrid aspect of job. And you'll, this is a new jargon, and you'll keep hearing again. Welcome to another jargon in HR, and yeah. But this is a jargon which will help people to push this change. So this is my take on it. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Shatrunjay. And I think that's where it's going to be all the more challenge with all this, hybridization that we're talking of. So typically, what we're saying is it's about what will matter will be what is the performance areas So typically it's not going to be like a function bucket, in a compartment and things like that, but to be more about where the performance area has to be. And then there could be a mix of different competencies, mix of different skills, which is where, whether it is role wise, whether it is about function wise. And in the midst of all this, I think that's where the learning function will have to look at as to how to create a very,
But they
framework.
need to understand the organization very well, and they need to go
Absolutely.
into individual roles. We can't take a broad brush, so we have to go into detail, take individual roles. So I'll share an example with you. What we did is that we realized that there are some aspect of technology which is vital for everybody, 6,000 people. And we launched a course called Daksh, where there are some basics of technology everybody should know. And not because it's like good to know it, that because their job depends on it. They will not be effective in their jobs unless they know that. So there are these basic stuff which will run across the jobs. And we need to identify and not make it very complex and do this. In HR, there's always a risk of, making things very much more complex than it appears. But, just sticking to basics and try to do that. Yeah, that I would say.
Right. But thanks. I think that's a very strong perspective that you put across, because accordingly, the learning map overall will get defined if the people who are the, the agents, the learning set of people, they're able to understand the mix of all of this. Otherwise, it will be very a narrow kind of an approach in creating that kind of a learning design or learning framework. So thanks for that, Shatrunjay, and that brought a lot of different perspective to this whole thing. With that, I will certainly like to so we've been talking about digital learning, and especially we are saying this thing, learning is going to be totally on demand, personalized, virtual, and something which is going to be multi-formatted and all of that. So with that, I'll request Deepti, who has been doing a lot of this, to share her perspectives.
Sure. So Jayanti, while I was listening to Shatrunjay also, and Anil also, and Anup was also sharing his perspective a while back, there were three aspects that came to my mind. In 1920, when the Spanish flu happened, it took 4 years for things to actually normalize before a set of pace could have been devised as far as any organization is concerned. We never know if something else happens after 2-3 years, but that much time it took to really set the pace for what is going to happen. If I look at an organization like ours, Shatrunjay has very rightly mentioned, hybrid is here to stay. And there are certain roles who are continuously being looked at, that whether we can make them a permanent work from home. Very certain, at least in our industry, only few roles, but it's being questioned and discussed that can we make them a work from home kind of a role for the organization. The third aspect that comes to my mind is, I was reading an article where travel for leisure has taken a good pace, but business travel has yet not taken off the way how it was before. Even though now everyone's accepting that pandemic is there and let's move on with the things the way it is. If you keep these three things in mind, almost all the organizations in the consumer durable industry would have a pan-India spread of workforce. My sales team would be probably spread in 16, 17 states altogether. And business travel is not happening. So digital is going to be the most important element for us, along with virtual instructor-led training, for us to reach out to them for any upskilling, reskilling, so to say. Thankfully, the wholesale shift to technology adoption that happened because of COVID has made it easier for people to kind of adapt, which probably organization like ours was trying for the past 2-3 years in that foray. A lot of benefits that we have seen and we will continue to see with a focus area going forward. Shatrunjay was talking about that, the same brush is not going to work for all, which has been spoken about for long, and we continue to see that right now. One program, one particular skill is not going to, be relevant for all. So there is a very detailed need for doing a skill mapping, depending on every role, what are the skills which is required, and how you kind of map the digital offerings available to the right skill and create learning journeys for different roles. I think how we take these programs to these, the geographical spread people is going to be critical. at least for the next 1 or 2 years max, before a new trend comes and before a new shift is seen in the light. This is also important for relearning for an organization is like ours, where product knowledge becomes absolutely critical. And there are new product launches that happen probably at every 6 months, and for a company like ours that are into 10 businesses put together, uh, learning and relearning the product to be able to do that differentiated selling in the market becomes very, very important. So digital is going to be is going to become very big, within the organization also, with the comfort that people now have with this. Some specifics that needs to be kept in mind from a digital point of view. Uh, Anup was talking about that bite-sized nano learning, absolutely relevant. We have in fact experimented and also have had our lessons with really long, kind of training programs digitally also that you take to people, and the pick-up rate reduces. So bite-sized nano learning is what people quickly adapt and what is going to be key from a digital point of view. For a company that's focusing on product training, AR, VR, seems critical. You rightly mentioned about the expense point of view, but in which product, how can you experiment that, make it creative, use for the right target audience, would also be one of the aspects that needs to be seen. But but AR VR is something that organizations will need to experiment with and will need to go forward from a digital point of view also, if you have to give that same experience as we were giving in our instructor led classroom based training. Last aspect that I want to mention about digital is, earlier, if I remember, if there were programs that were coming our way, the minimum standard that was mentioned was, oh, this is mobile ready. Most of the programs in digital were actually built keeping a desktop user in mind, and then they were modified different mobile devices. Now in one of the biggest trends that we are seeing in probably last year, which now is coming up, is the reverse. Most of the programs are now being created keeping a mobile device in mind, and then seeing how it can adapt to different other, equipments as well. So that's going to be other trend to see how easy it is for a learner to kind of learn in that also. So learning journeys, bite-sized nano modules, AR, VR, a lot of such things is going to pave the way for digital as we speak, from our point of view. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks, Deepti. I think again we are sort of reiterating how various format of digital learning which we are going to see. Probably it was happening in some pockets, but now it's all been accelerated, and we'll see more of it coming in the coming year. Probably people are already preparing in the background, and suddenly we'll see a spurt of all these things happening much more. It will become just like the main format for all kind of learning. So thanks for that perspective. With that, I like to request one thing here, like of course with Anup. See, one thing the other day when I was going through some of the articles of Dave Ulrich, the father of HR, is that one of the main things which is going to happen is that all eyes are going to be on HR. That's one of the major, out of the 7-8 points that he talked about. He says all eyes are going to be on HR with all this transition happening. So whether you say skills, learning, and career, they're all going to come together, and that is where is going to be the talent marketplace is going to it'll bring in the talent marketplace. So with that perspective, it's going to be very important, especially a lot of HR members, learning members are there today on the session also. They really like to know what's the role of HR and learning professionals going to be in this whole agenda. So over to you, Anup.
Yeah, thank you. I think you mentioned about the open talent market, which we implemented I would say year before, but certainly made a lot of sense, specifically in 2020 after COVID, where the hiring was freezed, and then you had to find talent within, and people had all the reasons why somebody is not suitable and why you need to go to the market earlier. And when we said no, there's no question of going to the market and you have to look within, I think the tool which was implemented a little before, a couple of months before, I think became very handy for us. And I think it was from Gloat, which we took their platform and then modified for our needs. I think, and the internal mobility became, such an easy process where you advertise and you people apply, and we found also that managers were more willing and more easier to accept people from within and not finding the shortfalls, but willing to look at the bright side of the person and what is there rather than what is not there. I think that became easy for us, and that gave us a good success, and it motivated employees as well. And then we had a survey which was COVID survey combined with kind of engagement survey last year. We kind of put it together, and for the first time, I think our score was so high, it was even far beyond any of our previous years in terms of engagement. It went up by plus 13 or plus 15 points compared to our own standards earlier. I think that helped us to move forward irrespective of with pandemic at its own limitations, but also I think of providing people opportunity was a great help. And I think with this tool, I think we were also able to advertise the projects which were available within, and people could apply and work globally. Since I support the global workforce for my division, I think people were, time was not a constraint, the boundaries were not a constraint. So if you had put your projects which are available with you, people could apply from any part of the world and could contribute to this project and also learn. The learning is a key element, but it's on the job. I think that was which worked very well for us. I think the other 2 points probably was touched a little bit less today, but I think I would say equally important is one is around the learning culture. I think if you have a culture of learning, you help people to provide them relevant content, choose what they need to learn, and provide them and bring them to to the people. And many a times, I think we have been using the curating content, not necessarily job of learning alone, but if you involve employees into that, I think you see wonders as well. And the amount of insights they provide, not only share their own viewpoints, but also what they learn and what is relevant for that topic, and bringing that back into the curated learning. I think that as we have seen it's a very, very, very useful, I would say. The last point was on the branding side. Again, it's connected a little bit of culture, but how do we in marketing, folks have always a strategy, go to market strategy. I think we will certainly see soon how do we go to people to ensure that you sell them what they need to learn, which has a business impact. So I would say go to employee strategy, I would say here, from a learning perspective or HR perspective, that you throw to them what they need to learn and which has a business impact. And as you see in Netflix or YouTube, as you search, more relevant content comes to you. So I think from a learning perspective, how do we bring that to the people and they're able to see it, and we channelize their learning rather than they're just learning sporadically. So I think that would be key as well as we move forward in 2021.
Thanks for that, Anup. Yeah, I think we have limited time left. So there are, of course, quite a few questions which have also been messaged. And but I have this quick, what do you say, whether you call it as a quick rapid fire kind of a question, but just 30 seconds for each one of you to sum up, to sort of, looking at, if you were to sum up, what's the learning agenda going to be for 2021? So I request maybe, over to you, Deepti. In 30 seconds, what do you think, which is going to be the learning agenda for the year ahead?
Okay, for 2021, it's going to be, I think, a very focused and a personalized, blended, bite-sized effort in keeping the business and the talent aligned, both for current and for future needs. So I guess somewhere that's going to be the agenda in every piece of initiative that one gets driven, and one has to question and reflect whether or not this is getting met. So that's in 30 seconds from my side.
Thanks, Deepti. Over to you, Anup.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think if you're focusing on mindset and the culture, I would say rest of the things would kind of fall in place. Certainly personalization, bite size, micro learning, all of them are part of it. But I think mindset and learning culture, of course, it has to be aligned with the business need.
Thanks for that. Anil, your
Sure.
perspectives?
Yeah, I think it would be all about balancing between upskilling, reskilling, and metaskilling. And from a L&D perspective, be agile, automate, and leverage and analytics. Thank you.
Thanks. Shatrunjay, to you, over to you.
I think some of these themes that we did discuss is the 2021 agenda is going to be for me is to to integrate learning in the flow of work. So if somebody is or our colleagues are working, how learning can help them in their roles and in their works. So the learning effort is not to create a program and generally make a big Allah about that, but at least to so that every employee while they're working they're touched by our initiatives or our programs. So it could be some technology driven or it could be a structured program. So learning in the flow of work and more getting inside employee work will be our agenda.
Thanks for that, Shatrunjay. And I think there are quite a few questions which have actually come in, wherein so maybe we can actually put it forward for any of the speakers could respond. The aspect of change management, that is going to be very important. So as far as how do we bring about that kind of the transition management? Any thoughts on that? Any interventions?
If I may, intervene and mention my thought over here, I think it is absolutely going to be critical, whether we call it learning, OD, since I handle both, so I can mention that's going to be absolutely critical from people point of view, from a talent agenda point of view. Businesses are changing, and that's what I highlighted before also, and businesses will change. It's not just Corona. In fact, that's the limelight for the whole of last year, but there are a lot of changes otherwise also that's happening in the business environment. How, as as HR learning department, we are able to align people, take them through it, and not create anxiety down the line, so that people know where we are going directionally. I think it's going to be very critical in 2021 more than ever before. We saw a lot of it, the flavor of it in 2020. Thankfully, and I want to say this with a lot of pride, that for us the crisis was managed once the lockdown opened. It was a very difficult year, but because of this entire change piece that we managed, our people right now are in a very, very good state from a business point of view, and they are motivated to have this last quarter also in that same line. Want to keep that same thing going for next year also, the role that leaders can play, HR can play from managing this change point of view. Yes, with our with us hand holding the business in that light and in that partnership, it can have a huge impact no matter what the situation is. So that's my 2 cents.
So thanks, DC. There's one more message which has come in, where they're asking about what is this? We have this mentoring, we have all those systems very well in place. Peer learning, there's a lot of talk about building those peer learning, peer boards, and things like that. If anybody would like to sort of share much, some perspectives on the peer learning part of it.
I think I can just add on 2 cents of mine here. I think in terms of peer learning, I think what is the critical here is that you learn when you need it, and you learn on the job at the time when you need it. I think that's the key. I think creating these communities sometimes, and creating the understanding who are the people who are expertise in certain areas and making them available for the rest of the organization. If you are stuck with a problem, let's say you're working on any of the problems from the business point of view, you know where to go to. So that is going to, if your problem is going to be solved immediately, and that will have immediate impact to you on the job. So what we have done is that we have created a lot of communities within, and where people are joining those communities from across the globe. It is not limited to any specific place. And you are trying to exchange your views on certain topics, certain skills, what you're doing, and you're sharing the challenges, you're sharing your difficulties, and there are people to help you out across the globe. So I think that's what we have done, and I think it is giving us good results. And of course, we have Yammer and different communities which we have opened up for employees. So the tools are helping us as well. So I think we are able to leverage to a large extent, and it's also becoming, not only you just learn, but also you apply at that time, and you have kind of a person to support across in case you're struggling, somebody in case you have issues, you voice it out, and there are people to support you.
Thanks. Thank you, Anu. So there's another, a query which delves on what are the things that the HR folks themselves or the learning professionals need to, what's the self-development focus that they need to have to actually manage all of this, to be a very successful, L&D person, skills or whatever.
Can I go for this? Hello. Okay. So let me respond to this. Yes. Yeah. I would say that you don't have to go after many jargons, and make your life very complex. Just observe the changes that are happening in the workplace and your organization, and respond to it from a very common sense view, and that's it. And while you respond to it fast and keep learning. So don't learn through books, etc., and just learn through actual do something and then learn from there. And just be aware of what's happening in an organization. And learning provides a great place for experimentation. I think within HR, if I look at, there is no scope for experimentation within recruitment, talent acquisition, rewards. You can do that, but it'll take a lot of time to do any experimentation. You can do maybe once, twice, thrice in 2 years, 3 years. But in learning, you can do a lot of experimentation. And it's you see the edtech industry is rising. And and even schools, I would say within the learning community, there are schools which are doing a lot. The edtech industry is doing a lot. And you look at it, all of these are founded not by so-called learning professionals. In fact, I have a very close friend, Krishna, and he founded this Simply Learn. And we were in school together, and I was in Hay Group for many years. And I always tell him that I was the one who should have should have founded this company which you founded, and he's an engineer, isn't it? So just observe. This is very pretty commonsensical, and we learn it from everywhere. And schools and teachers are doing a lot of innovation, so we can learn from anywhere. Don't fall into this HR jargon trap, and then just do something and make it work. That's it.
Thanks for that. I think there seems to be a
I just want to add a point over here. When you asked about that 30-second L&D agenda, one of the pointers that I had mentioned was business and talent aligned. And for HR and learning professionals to be able to achieve that, in my mind, first one has to be business aligned. So whether it is the performance or it is the levers or it is the external factors impacting the business, because we are, interacting with talent so much, I think our understanding of business and the all associated levers aligned to it should be very, very high. So if you ask me, it is not about really theoretically upskilling yourself, but making sure what's happening in the business is something that all learning professionals should attempt to the best of its. I think the conversations that we have with the business heads is of a different level. So that's again my 2 cents.
Jayanti, I'll just wanted to add something because what Sachinjay said kind of echoed. First of all, I'm a happy customer. Simply Learn. You can pass on the message to your friend. Most importantly, I think, you made a very, very profound statement. I want to reflect on it. Learning is a natural process. I have a 4-year-old at my home, my daughter, and the pace at which she learns, the way she interprets. We're all humans, right? We are bound to learn and evolve. So one of the traps we can fall in as L&D or HR professionals is, in the name of being custodians of learning, holding it tighter and not allowing the organization to evolve. So that's been a big a big insight for me over last couple of years, especially last 12 months. And also L&D being a little bit of, I extended that L&D being a little fearless. You spoke about please experiment. So first time ever in my career, my last year when we presented our HR annual, I had to present two slides to the global CHRO and the president. And the second slide said list of pilots and experiments which we did. There were 10 listed there. It didn't say list of success we had. So getting more comfortable to say things you're trying, whether you succeed or not. The whole idea of being agile and learn faster, I think, is the fundamental shift, because we don't know the answers. I think, and the third piece, which again the reason why I'm here today in the middle of a working day, is learning from the ecosystem. None of us have all the answers, but we can learn from each other, learn from various industries, and that would be the third thing I would add. So just wanted to add my comments because the question resonated a lot with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. I think that's a very good perspective. I mean, you were given that kind of an environment to actually list out the piloted ones. Maybe they've been successful, not successful. I think it's the kind of culture which also sort of promotes promotes that kind of thing for people to come forward and share all of that, because people are not going to be so comfortable. They'll only do out of the 10 projects, they'll say only the successful ones. I say, oh, you actually spent time on all the others and it didn't turn out well. I mean, those questions can come up, but then you were encouraged to come and share all of that. I think that is phenomenal, a part of it. So maybe yes, I can also sense like how Shatruj is talking about this HR versus HR jargons or whatever. So probably, yeah, we're trying to refrain from all the jargon.
15 years in consulting, Jayanti, and I'll take a little bit of a
I can understand that
for all these jargons, but
jargons that you've been hearing from a lot of those HR, CHROs and all of that, being in the consulting.
I think jargons have a purpose. They push an agenda, but they have that
right,
and have a another side effects also. So we take the medicine, but they will have a lot of other side effects. So that's what I'm cautioning.
Right. Yeah. So there are some other questions which have come in the interest of time, I'm just going to make it very quick. Many of them are actually, reflecting on this work from home. There seems to be really working remote work, some people working in office, some people. So one is that, of course, there's a question which is reflecting on whether how long this work from home or remote working is really going to continue. Is it true? So maybe this is a little out of this the agenda that we have defined. But another thing which actually comes out of that is that which is the format which will be most used in digital format, because if you are going to be having people from office, from homes, which is the most used digital format? We're talking about so many formats here, but what do you think will be the most used one in a long run? So we're talking about mobile, we're talking about, AR, VR, micro learnings, so many of them, so many formats. Which do you think is going to be the most used ones, keeping in mind this mixed work environment?
So Jayanti, Anil here. I'll respond to the question with a question, and I think because we don't know the answers, right? And it's not an original question. I'm borrowing it from someone I heard speak. So the question is this: if tomorrow morning, by a magic wand, everybody in the world gets their vaccine shot, how would you start behaving? How would we start behaving? Do you want to dress up and go back to work, or sit at home and do learning in mobile? I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, how will we start behaving if everything, people keep talking about going back to normal, right? So it's a hypothetical question because we don't know the answer, right? But the question is, people are talking about 3 months, 6 months, but if tomorrow morning all the problems are solved, would you be willing to dress up and go to work? If my answer, no, I would prefer to spend few days at home and few days go back to work. So I think it depends on collective how we respond. Technology is here to stay, but technology is just a means to a solution, right? So we can't put everything on technology. It's about how we as humans are there behaviors, habits we have built over last 12 months, we're going to long last for many years, or are we going to fall back to going back to theaters, going back to offices? And that's what we'll have to see. So I don't have an answer, but I thought that's a question we can all reflect on.
Right. Thanks, Anil. In fact, yesterday there was this, HBR live with Dr. Fauci. I don't know how many of us have seen that, and where the main question is, how soon are we going to go back to the normal? In fact, there was actually no real answer as such, but it was all about the approaches as to how and what we do and when things will actually get back to whatever we aspire for. So the heading was out there. When are we going to? How long is it going to take to go back to normal? Is what Dr. Fauci is going to address, and kept looking at that. But the final answer was about still we were not very clear in the end of it. So I think it's very much sums up what Anil you have just put forward. There's one question which is a little out of way, which is more to do with hiring and possibly to do with policies, where it's just a question which talks about. Maybe any of you can respond, where it says that there are going to be two sets of people. Are there going to be different sets of policies for people who are in the remote working from home and in the office? Will they be governed by different policies? How will it work? I mean, Anup, you may like to respond, or any
Yeah,
of
I think from my perspective, as of now, it is only a single set of rules, whether you're working from home or we are working from office. And depending on the organization need, let's assume that you are in a manufacturing organization and you need to touch something and you need to, work in that manner, then you need to be in office. And if you are, let's say in a manufacturing organization, but you are doing a planning activity and you don't have to be in a, you need to be on the shop floor, then you may have a hybrid model. And at this stage, I don't see them policies being different for different people. But I think eventually, if people wants to come to, work from home, and the organization, if there is a need to come to office, then there may be a certain way to incentivize them. But at this stage, for next at least 1 year, I don't see them having different policies.
Thanks for that, Anup. Thank you. And one last question. Keeping in mind the way things are, do you see any futuristic approach for accessing opportunities? Generally, people to access opportunities, the way hiring is happening and things. Any perspective out there? And accessing talent, how is it going to be futuristically? Is it going to remain the same, or whatever we are doing, we're just going to build on that for hiring purpose?
I'll quickly respond. I think if all of us who have been following news, TCS recently launched that they're moving the talent cloud way. At the simple analogy being, earlier we used to have servers in our premises. Now we have servers on cloud like that. Now cloud talent was in my company. Now I can access to talent cloud. So the whole gig economy piece, I think it's for a different day to talk, but you can go and read up. EY does a lot of work in the talent cloud space, and they're spreading the news in the industry. But one of the big companies out there, TCS, just 2 days back announced that they're going to talent cloud. I think future is going to be not just hybrid, but also hybrid in every sense. I think, as one of the panelists was speaking, it's not just hybrid of technology, the role, but also what's my identity in the organization: contractor, intern, apprentice, part-time. I think there's a lot going to evolve. I think talent cloud is something we all need to look out and learn more about. Yeah, that's my quick response.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Anil. And in fact, this has been a good reflection. We have actually come to our time to sort of wind up. With this, I'm sure many of the members who have been part of this, they've been able to, imbibe some part of it and reflect, and should be enabled to apply that in their own workplace or in their own lives. And that's what is the motive. Of course, as they say, you don't learn to walk. You don't learn to walk by actually following the rules. You actually learn by probably, falling down, getting up, and then doing. So that's how that each one of us will experience. There are no rules as such now, but yes, we have got very good perspectives from all the speakers out here. And I would thank, each one of you here, and to all the collaborators who had sort of supported. And we will we'll stay in touch, and we'll look at probably putting the link out there in the social media, so that more people, because some of them have been asking, so we'll probably share it there too. So thanks each one of you, and we'll stay connected.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Nice rest of the evening. Bye bye.
Bye.